After 8 years of living in my house, my son-in-law and daughter won the lottery $95 million. That evening, my son-in-law looked me straight in the eye and said, "Get the hell out of this house. This house is mine now." I just smiled. Then I asked him one single question. That question made his face turn pale as a corpse. I would make him lose everything, not because I was cruel, but because he was too greedy to realize he was standing on the edge of collapse. Welcome to our story. Before we begin, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Quick note. This is a fictional story with dramatized elements for experience and meaningful lessons. Any resemblance to real names or situations is purely coincidental, but the message, that's what truly matters. After 8 years, Connor told me I had to leave. I smiled. He didn't know about the second ticket. Hello. My name is Theodore Marsh. I'm 72 years old, and I spent 38 years as a highway engineer for the Oregon Department of Transportation. I built bridges, not just the kind that cross rivers, though I did plenty of those, but the kind that connect people to their jobs, their families, their futures. Engineering teaches you to think about foundations, about what holds up under pressure and what doesn't, about planning for the long haul. I should have applied those same principles to my own life. I live well. I used to live comfortably in a house at 2847 Ponderosa Lane here in Bend, Oregon. If you're familiar with Central Oregon, you know Bend sits at the foot of the Cascade Mountains, surrounded by pine forests and high desert air so clean it makes your lungs ache in the best way. Ponderosa Lane runs along the southern edge of town, a quiet street where the yards are wide and the neighbors know your name. The kind of place where you can hear the wind move through the trees at night. My late wife Marianne and I built that house together in 1988. And I mean built with our own hands. I did the framing, and the foundation poured the concrete myself with help from a buddy who worked construction. Marianne picked every tile, every paint color, every cabinet hinge. She planted the flower beds and the row of young birch trees along the driveway. Over the years, those birches grew tall and straight, their white bark glowing in the moonlight. Marianne used to say they were the bones of the house, the part that held the beauty up. We were married for 41 years. She passed away in the spring of 2016. Pancreatic cancer. It happened fast, too fast. One day she was complaining about back pain, and 6 weeks later she was gone. I still remember the exact moment the doctor told us there was nothing more they could do. Marianne squeezed my hand and said, "Well, Theodore, I guess we'll just have to make the best of the time we have." That was her way. Steady, practical, kind. After she was gone, the house felt too big, too quiet. I kept her side of the bed, made her slippers by the nightstand. I'd walk past the kitchen and expect to smell coffee, but there was only silence. Friends told me it would get easier. It didn't. It just got different. That fall-autumn of 2016, my daughter Claire called. She was 30 at the time, married to a man named Connor Blake. They'd been together since college, married for about 2 years. Claire had always been my little girl, the one who'd sit on my lap while I sketched out bridge designs on graph paper, asking 1,000 questions. She was smart, curious, full of life. But somewhere along the way, after she married Connor, she changed. She called less, visited less. When she did come by, Connor always had some reason to cut the visit short. That November, Claire told me Connor had been laid off from his sales job. They were struggling to make rent in Portland. She sounded exhausted, scared. So I did what any father would do. I told them to come home, to move in with me until they got back on their feet. "Just for a few months, Dad," Claire said, "until Connor finds something new." I believed her. They moved in just before Thanksgiving. At first it felt good to have people in the house again. Claire cooked dinners, and Connor helped me replace some rotted boards on the back porch. We'd sit around the table after dinner, talking about nothing in particular, weather, sports plans for the holidays. It felt like family. But then the months turned into a year. Connor didn't find work. Or maybe he stopped looking, I couldn't tell. He spent more and more time on the couch, scrolling through his phone, making phone calls behind closed doors. Claire started working double shifts at a medical office in town, coming home exhausted, too tired to talk. And slowly, so slowly, I didn't notice it happening, my house stopped feeling like mine. Connor began making little comments. "You really should update this kitchen, Theodore. These cabinets are from the 80s. Oh, or, you know, we could turn your workshop into a real guest room if we cleaned it out." At first I thought he was just trying to help. Then I realized he was measuring, planning, taking inventory. Year 2 became year 3, then 4, then 5. I kept thinking they'd leave once they saved enough, once Connor got a good lead on a job. But it never happened. Instead, I was the one who started feeling like a guest. Connor would rearrange the furniture without asking. He'd invite his friends over, and I'd retreat to my bedroom. Claire stopped meeting my eyes. When I'd try to talk to her alone, Connor would appear in the doorway listening. That was 8 years ago. I should have seen it sooner. I should have recognized the way Connor slowly turned my daughter against me, the way he made himself comfortable in a house he didn't build, a life he didn't earn. But I didn't, because I loved my daughter. Because I thought somehow things would get better. Then 3 months ago, I bought 2 lottery tickets at the Quick Stop on Highway 97. Just a couple of Powerball tickets, $2 each. I gave one to Claire as a little gift, a gesture. I kept the other one. 3 days later, one of those tickets won $95 million. And that's when Connor decided I had to leave. But Connor made one mistake. When I bought those lottery tickets, I didn't buy just one. Let me tell you how it all started. How 8 years ago I opened my door to Connor and Claire. But first, I need to go back a little further. Back to the spring of 2016 when I lost Marianne. She was 60 years old. We'd been planning a trip to the coast that summer. One of those long, slow drives along Highway 101 where you stop at every little town and eat clam chowder and watch the waves come in. Marianne loved the ocean. She used to say it reminded her that the world was bigger than whatever was troubling you. We never made that trip. The cancer moved fast. By the time the doctors caught it, there wasn't much they could do except make her comfortable. I stayed with her every day in that hospital room, holding her hand, talking about nothing and everything. She told me stories I'd heard 100 times before, about the day we bought the land on Ponderosa Lane, about the time Claire was born 3 weeks early, and I nearly drove off the road racing to the hospital. She laughed. Even then, she laughed. On her last morning, she squeezed my hand and said, "Theodore, don't you dare turn into one of those old men who stops living. Promise me." I promised. 3 days later, we held her funeral at the First Community Church. Claire came down from Portland and stood beside me at the graveside, her hand wrapped around mine. She cried quietly, her head on my shoulder. For a moment, it felt like I still had family, like I wasn't completely alone. But then Claire went back to Portland, and I went back to that empty house on Ponderosa Lane. And the silence was unbearable. That fall November of 2016, Claire called. I could hear the strain in her voice before she even said the words. "Dad, Connor got laid off. We're behind on rent. I don't know what we're going to do." I didn't hesitate. "Come home, sweetheart. Stay here until you get back on your feet." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." 2 weeks later, they pulled up in a rented truck with all their belongings. I helped Connor carry boxes into the spare bedroom. Claire hugged me on the front porch and whispered, "Thank you, Dad. It's just for a little while." I believed her. The first year or two, it wasn't so bad. Connor would help me with projects around the house, fixing a leaky faucet, replacing the weather stripping on the windows. Claire would cook Sunday dinners, pot roast, and mashed potatoes just like Marianne used to make. We'd sit at the kitchen table afterward talking about the weather, about Claire's new job at the medical office, about Connor's job search. It felt almost normal, almost like family, But somewhere around year 3, things started to shift. It was small at first. Connor began rearranging furniture without asking. One day, I came home from the hardware store and found that the old armchair, Marianne's favorite, the one she'd sit in to read every evening, had been moved to the garage. When I asked about it, Connor shrugged. It didn't fit the space, Theodore. We needed room for the new TV stand. Then he started moving Marianne's things. The framed photos of her that I kept on the mantel were taken down and replaced with generic prints from a department store. Her gardening tools disappeared from the shed. When I asked Claire about it, she looked away. Connor thought it might be healthier for you, Dad. You know, to move on. Move on. I didn't say anything. I just put one of Marianne's photos back on my nightstand where Connor wouldn't touch it. By year 4 and 5, the changes were harder to ignore. Connor stopped asking my opinion about anything. He'd invite people over, friends of his I'd never met, and I'd retreat to my bedroom. He started talking about our house instead of your house, as if he'd built it, as if he'd poured the foundation with his own hands. Claire stopped sitting with me after dinner. She'd disappear into their room, and I'd hear them talking in low voices, the door closed. I tried to talk to her. I'd catch her in the kitchen in the morning and say, "Honey, is everything all right?" She'd smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Everything's fine, Dad." But it wasn't. By year 6, 7, 8, 2021, 2022, 2023, into 2024, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Connor would walk past me in the hallway without a word. He'd make decisions about repairs, about landscaping, about painting rooms, and I'd only find out after it was done. When I objected, he'd sigh like I was being unreasonable. "Theodore, we're just trying to help. You're not getting any younger." I started spending more time in my bedroom. I'd eat dinner alone. I'd listen to the sound of their voices in the living room, their laughter, and I'd feel the walls of my own house closing in. My only relief was my neighbor, Bernard Sullivan. Bernard is 74, a retired postal worker with a dry sense of humor and a stubborn streak a mile wide. He'd been my friend for over 30 years, ever since he and his wife, Maureen, moved in 3 doors down. Bernard would stop by every week or so, usually with some excuse, needing to borrow a tool, asking about the weather, inviting me over for coffee. But I knew what he was really doing. He was checking on me. One Tuesday morning in early April this year, 2024, I walked over to Bernard's house. He was in his garage tinkering with an old lawnmower. He looked up and grinned. "So, Theodore Marsh, haven't seen you in daylight in 2 weeks. Thought maybe you'd turned into a vampire." I managed to smile. "Just keeping busy." "Busy hiding in your room, you mean?" I didn't argue. Bernard wiped his hands on a rag and looked at me seriously. "You know you don't have to live like this, right?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." We stood there for a minute, neither of us saying anything. Then Bernard pulled 2 crumpled dollar bills out of his pocket and held them up. "Tell you what, I'm heading to the Quick Stop to buy a Powerball ticket. Come with me. Buy one yourself. Maybe you'll win and finally get yourself out of that damn house." I laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. "Bernard, I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life." "Then it's about time you did." So I went with him. And on that Tuesday morning, the first week of April 2024, I did something I'd never done before. I bought a lottery ticket. Not because I needed the money, but because Bernard dared me to, and because for just a moment I wanted to believe that something, anything, could change. Those lottery tickets cost me $4, $2 each. The day I bought them was a Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. I'd gone over to Bernard and Maureen Sullivan's house that afternoon, same as I did most weeks. Bernard and I had a standing chess match, and Maureen always put on a pot of coffee and sat with us at the kitchen table, reading her book and occasionally making sarcastic comments about Bernard's terrible chess strategy. You're getting predictable in your old age, Theodore, Bernard said, moving his knight. I've seen that opening 3 times this month. And yet you still haven't beaten me, I replied. Maureen glanced up from her book and smiled. She's 71, sharp as a tack. With silver hair, she wears short and a laugh that fills a room. You two have been playing the same game for 30 years, she said. Honestly, I don't know how either of you stays awake. We played in comfortable silence for a while. Then Bernard leaned back in his chair and said, You see the Powerball jackpots up to 95 million. I didn't look up from the board. I don't play the lottery, Bernard. I know, but maybe you should. You could use a little excitement in your life. I moved my bishop. Checkmate in 3 moves. Bernard groaned. Damn it, Theodore. Maureen closed her book. Bernard, leave the man alone. If he doesn't want to throw his money away. It's $2. Bernard interrupted. $2 for a little bit of hope. Come on, Theodore. Live a little. I'm heading to the quick stop after this. Come with me. I dare you. I looked at him. He had that stubborn glint in his eye, the one that meant he wasn't going to let it go. And honestly, after 8 years of feeling invisible in my own house, maybe I did need a little excitement, even if it was just a stupid lottery ticket. Fine, I said. I'll buy one. Bernard grinned. That's the spirit. An hour later, we pulled into the quick stop on Highway 97 in Bernard's old pickup. The place is a small run-down gas station with peeling paint and a buzzing neon sign that says, Open 24 hours. Dave Wilson, the owner, was behind the counter. Dave's 55 balding, with a thick mustache and a flannel shirt. He seems to wear year-round. He looked up when we walked in and raised an eyebrow. Bernard Sullivan and Theodore Marsh, together, in the middle of the afternoon. This can't be good. We're here to make you rich, Dave, Bernard said, slapping $2 bills on the counter. 1 Powerball ticket. Dave rang it up and handed Bernard the ticket. Then Bernard turned to me. Your turn. I hesitated. It felt ridiculous standing there in a gas station at 72 years old, buying a lottery ticket for the first time in my life. But I pulled out my wallet and set my debit card on the counter. Actually, Dave, give me 2 tickets. Dave blinked. 2. He printed them out, ran my card, and handed me the tickets along with the receipt. I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into my wallet. Then I looked at the 2 tickets in my hand. They were identical, just strings of numbers. Meaningless. I shoved them in my pocket and followed Bernard back to the truck. 2 tickets, Bernard said, starting the engine. Look at you, Theodore. High roller. Don't start. That evening I went home. The house was quiet as usual. Connor was in the living room watching something on his laptop. Claire was in the kitchen cooking dinner. It was rare for her to cook anymore. Most nights she worked late or ate in her room. But tonight, she was at the stove stirring something in a pot. And for a moment, it reminded me of the old days when Marianne would stand in that exact spot humming to herself. Hey, Dad, Claire said, not looking up. Dinner's almost ready. I pulled the 2 lottery tickets out of my pocket and looked at them. On impulse, I walked over to Claire and held one out. Hey, I picked up a couple of lottery tickets today. Silly, I know. But here, you can have one. Claire turned, surprised. She wiped her hands on a towel and took the ticket. For the first time in months, she smiled a real smile, small but genuine. Thanks, Dad. Who knows, maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe, I said. Connor appeared in the doorway, his arms crossed. He looked at the ticket in Claire's hand and snorted. You bought lottery tickets. Seriously, Theodore. What you trying to win back your dignity? He walked over, plucked the ticket out of Claire's fingers, and held it up to the light, like he was examining a counterfeit bill. Powerball. 95 million. Yeah, good luck with that. Claire didn't say anything. She just turned back to the stove. I went to my bedroom, pulled the other ticket out of my pocket, and slipped it into the top drawer of my nightstand, next to Marianne's reading glasses. Then I forgot about it. 3 days later, Saturday, April 6th, I was out in my workshop sanding down a piece of cedar I'd been shaping into a small box. I liked working with my hands. It kept me sane. I was focused on the grain of the wood when I heard a scream from inside the house. Not a scream of fear, a scream of shock, of joy. I dropped the sandpaper and walked quickly toward the back door. When I stepped inside, Claire was standing in the middle of the kitchen, trembling, her phone in one hand and the lottery ticket in the other. "We won," she whispered. "We won. $95 million. Connor appeared behind her, moving fast. He snatched the ticket from her hand and ran to the laptop on the counter, pulling up the Powerball website. His eyes scanned the numbers. Once. Twice. "Holy hell," he breathed. "We actually won." I stood in the doorway watching them. Claire's hands were shaking. Connor was already on his phone, dialing a number, pacing back and forth. "Yeah, I need to speak to someone about a lottery claim. Big one. 95 million. Neither of them looked at me. I stood there for a long time, feeling something strange settle in my chest. Not excitement, not joy, just a quiet, hollow ache. Because in that moment, I realized something I should have seen years ago. I didn't exist to them anymore. I was just a ghost in my own house. That evening, I stayed out in the workshop until it got dark. When I finally walked back inside, Connor was waiting for me at the kitchen table. Connor was waiting when I walked in. His posture had changed, no longer the polite tolerance he'd worn for 8 years, but something harder. He sat at the kitchen table, arms folded. Claire stood by the sink, her back to me. "What's going on?" I asked. Connor didn't stand. "We need to talk. Our situation has changed." I stayed near the door. "What do you mean, Claire and I just won $95 million, and this house doesn't fit our lifestyle anymore?" The words hung in the air. Your lifestyle. "That's right." Connor leaned back, spreading his hands. "We think you'd be more comfortable in a senior living facility, somewhere with staff medical care. We'll cover all the costs. All you have to do is sign over the property." Sign over the property. I looked at Claire. "Sweetheart, what is this?" She didn't turn around. She didn't say a word. Connor stood and walked to the counter. "Let me be clear, Theodore. We don't need your charity anymore. We don't need you. This house is a relic, bad plumbing, old wiring. We could sell it, tear it down. Either way, it's ours now." "It's mine," I whispered. Connor smiled. Not kindly. "Actually, you might want to rethink that, because if you make this difficult, we'll take legal steps. Competency hearings, guardianship proceedings. You're 72, Theodore. You live alone, barely take care of yourself. A good lawyer could make a strong case that you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs." My hands shook. "That's a lie." "Is it? At your age, how many good years do you really have left? 5, 10? Do you want to spend them fighting us, because we will fight, and we will win?" I looked at Claire again. "Please, look at me." She turned, and for 1 second I saw something, guilt, maybe pain. But then Connor put his hand on her shoulder, and she looked away. "We're offering you a good deal," Connor said. "A clean exit. We'll set you up, cover your expenses. All you have to do is cooperate. And if I don't, then we do this the hard way. I've already started documenting things. The way you forget to pay bills, the times you've seemed confused, your isolation, your depression. A judge will think, this man needs help, and we'll be right there to provide it. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. Connor adjusted his shirt. Think about it tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. Come on, Claire. He walked toward the hallway. Claire followed, head down, hands clasped. She didn't look at me. And then they were gone, and I stood alone in my own kitchen, the kitchen Marianne and I had built, and I felt like a ghost. I couldn't stay there. I walked out the back door to my workshop. The smell of sawdust and varnish, the tools on pegboards, the half-finished cedar box on my workbench. I turned on the light and stood there feeling the weight of Connor's words pressing down. We don't need you. You're no longer capable. How many good years do you really have left? I sat on the old stool and put my head in my hands. I felt small, powerless, afraid. I stayed out there until it got dark. Then I walked back inside, past the kitchen, where Connor and Claire's voices drifted from behind their closed bedroom door, and into my own room. I sat on the edge of the bed, not my side, but Marianne's. It was an old habit. Whenever I needed to think, to sort through something difficult, I'd sit on her side as if somehow she was still there. I stared at the framed photo on the dresser, Marianne and me on our wedding day. Young, full of hope. I felt so far from that man now. Connor was right. I was 72. Alone. No leverage. Then my eyes drifted to the nightstand drawer. I hesitated, then pulled it open. Inside was a small envelope where I kept important things, Marianne's reading glasses, old letters, spare cash. And beneath all that, folded in half, was a slip of paper. The lottery ticket. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The numbers were printed clearly. I grabbed my phone and searched for the Powerball results. The winning numbers appeared. I compared them to the ticket. They matched. Every single one. I sat there, heart pounding. Then I pulled my wallet from my jacket. The receipt was still inside, proof I'd purchased both tickets in one transaction. I had bought them. Both of them. Connor didn't know. He thought the only winning ticket was the one he'd taken from Claire. But he was wrong. I sat back down on Marianne's side of the bed, staring at the ticket. For the first time in 8 years, I felt something other than resignation. Anger. And beneath that, something stronger. Hope. I thought about Marianne, how she'd put her hand on my shoulder when I was overthinking a problem and say, Theodore, sometimes you just have to trust the foundation. If it's solid, it'll hold. This was my foundation, this house, this life, the work I'd done. I wasn't going to let Connor take it. I slept with the ticket under my pillow that night, and when morning came, Sunday, April 7th, I picked up the phone and called Bernard. Bernard, I said when he answered. I need your help. Theodore. His voice was rough with sleep. What's wrong? I need your help, I said. My voice shook. Connor, he's trying to take my house. He's threatening me with competency hearings. But Bernard, I found something. The other lottery ticket. I bought 2. I still have one. There was a pause. Then Bernard said, I'm coming over. Right now. No, don't. Connor and Claire are here. Then come to my house. 5 minutes. He hung up. I grabbed the ticket, the receipt, my wallet, and my keys. I slipped out the back door and walked the 3 houses down to Bernard's place. He was already standing on his front porch in his bathrobe waiting. You look terrible, he said when I got close. I feel terrible. He put his hand on my shoulder and guided me inside. Maureen was in the kitchen already making coffee. She turned when she saw me and her face went soft with worry. To Theodore, honey, what happened? I sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Bernard and I had played chess just 4 days ago, and told them everything. The lottery win, Connor's threats, the assisted living facility, the competency hearings, the discovery of the second ticket. By the time I finished, Maureen's face was flushed with anger. "That snake," she said. "That absolute snake." And Claire just stood there. She didn't say a word. Bernard leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his jaw tight. "You need a lawyer. A good one." "I don't know any lawyers." "I do," Maureen said. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. "Rachel Kemp. She's Bernard's niece's daughter. Do you remember her? She came to our barbecue a few years back. Smart as a whip. Practices property and family law in Portland." Bernard nodded. "Rachel's tough. If anyone can handle this, she can." Maureen dialed. It rang 4 times. Then a woman's voice answered. "Aunt Maureen, it's early. Everything okay? Rachel, honey, I'm sorry to call on a Sunday, but we have an emergency. It's our neighbor Theodore Marsh. He needs help. Can you see him today?" There was a pause. Then Rachel said, "Tell me what's going on." Maureen handed me the phone. I explained everything again quickly, clearly, like I was presenting a bridge design to the state board. When I finished, Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Marsh, do you have the receipt proving you purchased both tickets in one transaction?" "Yes." "And the second ticket is still in your possession?" "Yes." "Then you have a case. Can you be in Portland by 11? I'll meet you at my office." "I'll be there." She gave me the address and hung up. I handed the phone back to Maureen. "She'll see you," Maureen said, squeezing my hand. "You're going to be okay." Bernard stood. "I'm coming with you." "No," I said. "Thank you, but I need to do this myself." Bernard studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But you call me the second you're done." "Understand, I will." I left their house and walked back to mine. Connor's car was still in the driveway, the windows dark. I got into my truck, started the engine, and headed west toward Portland. The drive took 3 hours. Highway 97 south to Bend, then west on Route 20 through the Cascade Mountains. The road wound through pine forests and high desert scrub, past snow-capped peaks and wide-open sky. I'd driven this route 100 times when I worked for the DOT. I knew every curve, every grade, every place where ice would form in winter. I thought about Marianne, about the day we'd driven this same road to pick out tile for the kitchen. She'd fallen asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window, and I'd driven in silence, just watching her breathe. I thought about Claire, about the little girl who used to sit on my lap while I sketched bridge designs, about the way she'd laugh when I'd let her help me with measurements, holding the end of the tape measure, like it was the most important job in the world. I thought about Connor, about the way he'd looked at me last night, cold and calculating, like I was a problem to be solved. And I thought about what I'd spent my whole career doing, building things that held up under pressure. Bridges, roads, foundations. Everything I'd ever built had one thing in common: a solid base. If the foundation was strong, the structure would stand. This house was my foundation, this life, and I wasn't going to let it crumble. I reached Portland just before 11. Rachel's office was downtown in a brick building near the river. I parked on the street and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Rachel was waiting in the lobby. She was 42 tall and sharp-eyed, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She shook my hand firmly. "Mr. Marsh, come on back." Her office was small, but professional law books on the shelves, framed diplomas on the wall. She gestured to a chair and sat across from me, a legal pad in front of her. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the tickets, the receipt, Connor's threats, the competency hearings, the assisted living facility. I showed her the ticket and the receipt. She examined both carefully, took photos, made notes. When I finished, she leaned back and looked at me. Here's the situation. Under Oregon law, the person who purchased the ticket owns the ticket, unless there's a signed agreement transferring ownership. You bought both tickets in one transaction. You have the receipt. You gave one ticket to your daughter as a gift. There was no contract, no sale, no transfer of ownership. The ticket your son-in-law is trying to claim legally belongs to you. Relief washed over me. So I have a case. You have a strong case, but we need to act fast. We're going to file a notice of dispute with the Oregon Lottery Commission today. Right now. Today. Today. If we wait, Connor could try to claim the prize and make this messier. We need to get ahead of it. She pulled out her laptop and started typing. For the next 2 hours, we worked together, drafting the notice, signing affidavits, gathering evidence. At 2:47 that afternoon, Rachel hit send on the electronic filing. Done, she said. The commission has been notified. Connor can't claim that prize now without a hearing. I stared at her. Just like that. Just like that. She closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. Mr. Marsh, when they find out about this, they're going to be angry. Are you safe at home? I'll be careful. If anything happens, anything at all, you call the police. And you call me. Understand? I understand. I shook her hand and left. The drive home felt different. The mountains were the same, the road was the same, but I wasn't. I didn't feel defeated anymore. I felt armed. I reached Bend just after 7. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. I pulled onto Ponderosa Lane and saw the lights on in my house. Connor's car was in the driveway. I parked and walked to the front door. Before I could open it, Connor appeared in the hallway, his phone in his hand, his face red. "What the hell did you do?" he said. I'd seen Connor angry before. But this was different. This wasn't the cold, calculating anger of last night. This was the rage of a man who'd already started spending money that wasn't his. Connor's voice filled the house before I could even close the door. Our lawyer got the notice. You want to explain this? He was standing in the hallway, blocking my path, his phone still in his hand. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. I could see the vein in his temple pulsing. I set my keys on the table by the door and met his eyes. I don't owe you an explanation. You filed a dispute claim, Connor said, his voice rising. You're trying to steal our money. I'm not stealing anything, I said calmly. I bought both tickets. I have the receipt. You gave one to Claire. You can't take back a gift. I gave Claire a ticket. Not the winning ticket. That ticket is mine. Connor stepped closer. You think a judge is going to believe that you think anyone's going to believe you just happened to keep the winning ticket for yourself. I walked past him into the living room. My legs felt steady. My hands didn't shake. I sat down in Marianne's old armchair, the one Connor had moved to the garage years ago, the one I'd quietly brought back into the house last month. I sat in it now, claiming my space. Connor followed me, standing over me, arms crossed. The power posture of a man used to getting his way. Here's what's going to happen, Theodore, he said. You're going to withdraw that claim today, because if you don't, we're going to make your life a living hell. I looked up at him. Is that a threat? It's a fact. We have resources now, real money. We can drag this out for years. Lawyers, depositions, appeals. How old are you? Theodore, 72. At your age, do you really think you'll live long enough to see the end of this? I didn't answer. Connor leaned down his hands on the armrests of my chair, his face close to mine. I've been documenting things, Theodore, concerning behaviors, memory lapses, the time you left the stove on, the bills you forgot to pay, the way you wander around talking to yourself. My chest tightened. I've never left the stove on. Connor smiled. Are you sure? Because I have notes that say otherwise. Dates, times, witnesses. That's a lie. Is it, or is it just the failing memory of an elderly man who can't take care of himself anymore? Connor straightened, putting his hands in his pockets. We can prove you're not competent, Theodore. We can prove you need a guardian. And when we do, every decision you make, including this lawsuit, goes away. I heard a sound at the doorway. Claire was standing there, her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale. Connor, she said quietly, stay out of this. Connor snapped, not even looking at her. Claire flinched, but she didn't leave. She just stood there watching, her eyes moving between Connor and me. I stood up slowly. My knees ached, but I didn't let it show. I looked Connor in the eye. This conversation is over, I said. Connor's smile widened. You're going to lose everything, Theodore. The money, your daughter, your dignity, all of it. I walked toward the door. As I passed Claire, I paused. She looked at me, and for just a moment I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who'd held my hand at Marianne's funeral. Then I kept walking. You can't win this, Connor called after me. I stopped at the threshold of the hallway and turned back. My dignity is mine, Connor. You can't take that. I went to my bedroom and closed the door. For a long time I sat on the edge of the bed, listening. I could hear Connor and Claire talking in low voices. Then the voices got louder. Claire was saying something I couldn't make out the words, and Connor cut her off, his tone sharp. Then I heard Claire crying. Connor's voice rose. He did this. Not us. He's the one tearing this family apart. I closed my eyes. At 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Are you okay? I typed back. Yes. He threatened me. Competency hearings, guardianship. Her reply came immediately. Document everything. Write it down. Dates, times, exact words. I pulled out an old notebook from my desk drawer, one I'd used years ago for project notes, and started writing. Sunday, April 7th, 2024. 7:15 p.m. Connor confronted me in the living room, said he's been documenting concerning behaviors, claimed I left the stove on false, claimed I forgot to pay bills false, threatened to prove I'm not competent, threatened guardianship proceedings, said they could drag the lawsuit out for years. Claire was present, but said nothing. I wrote for 20 minutes, recording everything I could remember, Connor's exact words, his body language, the lies he'd told, the threats he'd made. When I finished, I stared at the page, and slowly a realization settled over me. Connor hadn't just started documenting things after the lottery win. He'd been planning this for a long time. Maybe months, maybe years. The notes he'd mentioned, the witnesses, those weren't real. But the fact that he'd thought to threaten me with them meant he'd been preparing. He'd been waiting for an opportunity to take control. The lottery win had just accelerated his timeline. I set the notebook on the nightstand and lay down. But I didn't sleep well. Every sound in the house made me tense. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a threat. When morning came, Monday, April 8th, I got up at dawn and made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, the notebook in front of me, and waited. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. The voice on the other end would change everything. The woman introduced herself as Janet Pierce from Columbia Bank. Mr. Marsh, I'm the assistant branch manager. I'm calling about a power of attorney filing. We received yesterday afternoon, bearing your name with Connor Blake, listed as your designated representative. I stood in the kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear, the floor tilting beneath me. I never filed a power of attorney. There was a pause. That's what we suspected. The signature didn't match the one we have on file for you. We rejected the application and flagged the account. Mr. Marsh, someone attempted to forge your signature. My hand tightened on the phone. Who submitted it? The name on the submission was Connor Blake. If this document had been accepted, it would have given him full legal authority over all your accounts, checking, savings, everything. He could have transferred funds, closed accounts, taken out loans in your name. I sank into a chair. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. Connor hadn't just threatened me. He'd tried to steal everything. Every dollar I had. My pension. The money Marianne and I had saved for 40 years. If the bank hadn't caught the forged signature, if they'd processed the paperwork, Connor would have cleaned me out before I even knew what happened. Mr. Marsh. Are you still there? Yes, I managed. I'm here. I'm emailing you a copy of the document right now, Janet said. You'll want to show it to your attorney and Mr. Marsh. You should file a police report. This is criminal fraud. I will. Thank you. I hung up and sat at the table staring at my phone. My hands were shaking. Connor had done this yesterday, Monday, the day after I filed the dispute claim. Less than 24 hours after our confrontation in the living room, he'd gone to the bank and tried to forge a power of attorney. Was this retaliation? Or had he been planning this all along? The fear that had been sitting in my chest for days began to shift. Slowly, it hardened into something else. Anger. At 9:15, I called Rachel. He tried to forge a power of attorney, I said, my voice shaking. The bank caught it. They rejected it. But he tried. Rachel was silent for a moment. Then she said, That's criminal fraud. Forgery. This changes everything, Mr. Marsh. What do I do? Call the bank back. Get that document. Email it to me immediately. Then go to the Bend Police Department and file a report. Today. Do not wait. Okay. This is good, Mr. Marsh. I know it doesn't feel good. But this is evidence. Hard evidence that Connor is willing to commit crimes to get what he wants. We can use this. I called the bank back. Janet confirmed she'd sent the email. At 10:30 it arrived. I opened it on my laptop, my heart pounding. The document was a standard power of attorney form. My name was typed at the top. Connor Blake's name was listed as the agent, and at the bottom, in careful practiced handwriting, was a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. But it wasn't. The slant was wrong. The loop in the M was too wide. Connor had tried, he'd practiced, I could tell, but he hadn't quite gotten it right. I stared at the signature for a long time. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. Connor had sat down somewhere, maybe in my own house, maybe at a coffee shop downtown, and practiced signing my name until he thought he had it right. Then he'd taken this form to the bank and lied. I forwarded the email to Rachel. Her reply came within minutes. This is gold. See you at the mediation. That afternoon, I drove to the Bend Police Department. The building was small brick with a flagpole out front. I walked inside and told the officer at the desk I needed to file a report for attempted fraud. They assigned me to a detective named Morrison. He was in his 50s, gray-haired with a calm, patient manner. He listened while I explained everything, the lottery tickets, the dispute, the confrontation, and now the forged power of attorney. I showed him the email from the bank. Morrison took notes, asked questions, examined the document. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, and looked at me seriously. "Mr. Marsh, this is a felony. Forgery, attempted fraud. If we can prove Mr. Blake submitted this document knowing it was false, he could face criminal charges." "I want that on record," I said. Morrison nodded. "We'll open a case. I'll contact the bank, get their statement, pull the security footage if they have it. This is going to take time, but we'll follow up." He handed me a receipt with a case number printed at the top. Number 2024-BR-04751. "Keep this," he said. "And Mr. Marsh, be careful. If this man is willing to forge legal documents, there's no telling what else he might do." I folded the receipt and put it in my wallet right next to the lottery receipt. "Thank you," I said. I drove home slowly, the case number heavy in my pocket. When I pulled onto Ponderosa Lane, the house looked the same as it always did. The birch trees Marianne had planted swayed in the breeze. The porch light was on. Connor's car was in the driveway. But something had shifted. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was armed. I had filed the report. What I didn't tell the officer was this: Connor Blake should be careful with me now. Because I had proof he was willing to commit a crime. Connor came home that evening with flowers. Cheap supermarket flowers wrapped in cellophane. It was 6:30. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when I heard his car pull into the driveway. The front door opened. Connor appeared in the kitchen doorway holding the bouquet like a peace offering. "Theo," he said. His voice was soft, conciliatory. "I think we got off on the wrong foot." I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. Connor set the flowers on the counter and pulled out a chair. "May I?" I nodded. He sat down across from me, his hands folded on the table. "I want to apologize. I was overwhelmed. The lottery win, the pressure, the legal stuff, it all got to me. I didn't mean the things I said." I sipped my coffee. "Which things?" "About the house. About competency hearings. I was angry. I wasn't thinking straight." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Theo, you're family. Claire and I, we don't want to fight with you. We want to make this work." I set my cup down slowly. "Make what work?" "All of it." Connor spread his hands. "Look, I know we've had our differences, but we can fix this. You stay here. This is still your house. We'll set up an account, $5,000 a month just for you. All you have to do is withdraw the dispute claim." I didn't react. I just watched him. "In exchange for what?" I asked. "In exchange for acknowledging that the lottery ticket was a gift," Connor said smoothly. "You gave it to Claire. We won. And in return, we take care of you. $5,000 a month, Theo. That's $60,000 a year. Tax-free. It's more than your pension. You could travel. Fix up the house. Do whatever you want." He smiled. It looked almost genuine. "When we could be a family again," Connor continued. "Sunday dinners, game nights, just like Marianne used to do." My jaw tightened. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't talk about my wife." Connor blinked as if surprised. "I'm just saying, you threatened me." I said, my voice steady. "You tried to forge a power of attorney to steal my money, and now you think a few flowers and a monthly payoff will fix that." Connor's smile faltered. Just for a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, something cold and calculating. Then he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "You really want to fight us?" he said. His voice had changed. The warmth was gone. "I'm not fighting anyone," I said. "I'm defending what's mine." "What's yours?" Connor let out a short, bitter laugh. You're 72 years old, Theo. You live in the past. You cling to this house because it reminds you of a woman who's gone. Marianne is gone. She's been gone for 8 years, and you're still sitting here pretending she's coming back. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. Get out, I said. Connor stood too. He was taller than me, and he knew it. He looked down at me with something close to contempt. You could have had an easy life, he said. 5,000 a month. No worries, no stress. But you'd rather die poor and alone, clinging to your pride. I'd rather die with my dignity intact. Connor stared at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're going to lose everything, he said. The money, your daughter, this house, all of it. And when you do, don't say I didn't try to help you. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. You know what your problem is, Theo. You think being stubborn makes you strong, but it doesn't. It just makes you pathetic. He left. The door slammed behind him. I stood in the kitchen listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I picked up the flowers, the cheap, cellophane-wrapped supermarket flowers, and dropped them in the trash. I sat back down at the table. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Connor had tried threats. That hadn't worked. So he'd tried manipulation, bribery, emotional blackmail. And when that didn't work, he'd shown his true face again. The cold, cruel man who thought money could buy anything, who thought I was weak enough to be bought. But he was wrong. I thought about what he'd said, about Marianne, about me clinging to the past. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was clinging. Maybe this house, these memories, this life, maybe it was all just a way to hold on to something that was gone, but it was mine. My past, my memories, my home. And I'd be damned if I let Connor Blake take it from me. I went to bed that night and lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I knew Connor would try something else. Men like him always did. When threats didn't work, when manipulation didn't work, they found a new angle, a new weapon. But for the first time since Marianne passed away, I remembered who I was. Theodore Marsh, engineer, builder, survivor. I'd built bridges that held up under pressure. I'd built a house that had weathered 36 years of storms. I'd built a life with Marianne that Connor could never understand and never take away. And I wasn't going to let him break me now. The following Tuesday, someone knocked on my door. A firm, official knock. The kind that makes your stomach drop before you even turn the handle. I opened it to find a woman standing on my porch, holding a clipboard and a county ID badge clipped to her jacket. She was in her early 40s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and tired eyes that had seen too much. Mr. Theodore Marsh, she asked. Yes. My name is Lisa Hernandez. I'm an investigator with Deschutes County Adult Protective Services. We received a report regarding your welfare. I need to conduct an assessment to determine whether you're safe and capable of caring for yourself. My stomach twisted. Connor. Who filed the report? I asked. I'm not permitted to disclose that, Lisa said. May I come in? I wanted to say no. I wanted to shut the door and call Rachel, but I knew that would only make things worse. Refusing would look suspicious, like I had something to hide. Of course, I said, stepping aside. Lisa walked into the living room and took a seat on the couch. She set her clipboard on the coffee table and pulled out a pen. Mr. Marsh, I'm going to ask you some questions. Just answer as best you can. There's no right or wrong here. I just need to understand your current situation. I sat down in Marianne's armchair. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding. What's today's date? Lisa asked. Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. And who's the current president of the United States? I answered. She asked more questions. Where did I live? How long had I lived here? What did I do for work? Did I have any medical conditions? Did I take any medications? I answered everything clearly, precisely, the way I used to present project reports to the state board. Mr. Marsh, the report we received mentioned memory loss and confusion. Have you experienced anything like that? No, I said firmly. Never. Do you manage your own finances? Yes. I pay my bills on time. I balance my checkbook every month. I've been doing it for 40 years. Do you prepare your own meals? Yes. And you live here with your daughter and her husband? They live here, I corrected. This is my house. I invited them to stay 8 years ago when they were having financial difficulties. Lisa made notes. I couldn't read her expression. Mr. Marsh, would you mind if I took a look around, just to get a sense of your living environment? Go ahead. We walked through the house together. Lisa checked the kitchen first. The counters were clean. The refrigerator was stocked with fresh food, milk, eggs, vegetables, leftovers in labeled containers. The stove was spotless. Not a single burner left on not a single sign of neglect. We moved to the bathroom. Clean. Organized. Towels folded. Medicine cabinet tidy with my blood pressure medication neatly lined up, each bottle labeled with the date. Then my bedroom. The bed was made. Clothes put away. Marianne's photo on the nightstand, the lottery ticket still hidden in the drawer below. Finally, we went out back to my workshop. Lisa stepped inside and paused. The tools were hung on pegboards, each in its place. The workbench was clean, sawdust swept. On the shelf sat a row of small wooden objects I'd been making over the years, birdhouses, boxes, a small carved bowl. Lisa picked up one of the birdhouses and examined it. This is beautiful work. You still do woodworking. It keeps my hands busy, I said. She set it down gently. Mr. Marsh, I've been doing this job for 12 years. I can tell the difference between someone who needs help and someone who's being targeted. You're not the person described in that report. Relief washed over me. So you'll close the case. I still need to interview your neighbors and your family members, Lisa said. But based on what I've seen today, there's no indication that you're unable to care for yourself. Your home is clean, your mind is sharp, your physical health seems good. She paused at the door and handed me her business card. If you ever do need help, real help, call me. Thank you. Lisa left. I closed the door and leaned against it, my hands finally starting to shake. I'd held it together during the interview, answered every question, passed every test. But now alone in the quiet of my own house, the humiliation hit me. I'd had to prove my competency. In my own home, I'd had to show a stranger that I could take care of myself, that I wasn't confused or dangerous or incapable. At 72 years old, I'd been treated like a child who couldn't be trusted. And Connor had done this. He'd filed that report. I knew it. He'd called Adult Protective Services and told them I was incompetent, unsafe, a danger to myself. He'd weaponized the system against me, hoping they'd declare me unfit and appoint a guardian. Him. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were still shaking. Lisa had said she'd interview Connor next, and I knew exactly what he would say. He'd be calm, concerned, earnest. He'd tell her about my memory lapses, my confusion, the time I supposedly left the stove on. He'd paint a picture of a fragile old man who couldn't take care of himself anymore, and he'd sound so believable. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a different kind of fear. Not the fear of losing money or losing the house, but the fear of losing my independence. my autonomy. The right to live my own life in my own home on my own terms. That was what Connor was really trying to take. Not just my money, my freedom. Lisa interviewed Bernard and Maureen the next morning. Bernard called me as soon as she left. "That son of a bitch tried to get you declared incompetent." His voice was loud, furious. "Lisa just left. She asked us 100 questions about you, your memory, your habits, whether we'd ever seen you confused or unsafe." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you're sharper than half the engineers still working out there." Maureen told her Connor Blake should be ashamed of himself. "We told her the truth, Theo, that you're fine, that this whole thing is garbage." I closed my eyes. "Thank you." She asked if we'd be willing to testify if it came to that. I said absolutely. Bernard paused. "You're not alone in this, Theo. You hear me? I hear you." That afternoon, there was another knock on my door. This time, it was Pastor Joyce Morgan. Joyce was 67, recently retired from First Community Church, with silver hair and a calm, steady presence that had comforted our congregation for 30 years. She was also a close friend of Bernard and Maureen. "Theodore," she said, giving me a hug. "Maureen called me. I wanted you to know you have support. From the church, from the community." She came inside and sat at the kitchen table. From her bag, she pulled out a thick folder. "I've known you for 16 years, Joyce said. "Ever since Marianne and I served together on the missions committee. You were a devoted husband, a loving father, a good neighbor. And when Marianne passed, you carried that grief with dignity." She opened the folder and spread out 10 handwritten letters on the table. "These are from members of First Community. People who know you. People who are willing to testify on your behalf if needed." I stared at the letters. My throat tightened. I picked one up. It was from a couple I barely knew, Tom and Susan Reed, who lived 2 streets over. They wrote that they'd seen me at the hardware store every Saturday for years. Always polite, always coherent, always helpful when someone needed advice on a project. They offered to help in any way they could. Tears welled up in my eyes. Why would they do this? Joyce reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Because Marianne was loved. And so are you." The next morning, Thursday, April 18th, Lisa called. "Mr. Marsh, I'm closing your case. My conclusion is that the report was unsubstantiated. There's no evidence of cognitive decline or self-neglect. You're fully competent to manage your own affairs." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you." "I interviewed your son-in-law yesterday," Lisa continued. "He made several allegations about your memory and confusion. Not one of them was corroborated. In fact, everyone I spoke to said the opposite." "What happens now?" "I'm noting in my report that this appears to be a malicious filing related to a financial dispute. If Mr. Blake files another report without legitimate cause, there will be legal consequences." I sat down, the phone pressed to my ear. I felt relief and anger. Connor had tried to take my freedom, my autonomy, and he'd failed. "Thank you, Lisa. Take care of yourself, Mr. Marsh." That evening, Bernard and Maureen invited me over for dinner. But when I arrived, I found it wasn't just the 3 of us. Pastor Joyce was there. So were Jim and Carol Patterson, neighbors from down the street I'd known for years. "We thought you could use some company," Maureen said, ushering me inside. The table was set with Maureen's best dishes. She'd made pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and homemade rolls. The kind of meal Marianne used to make on Sundays. We sat around the table, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since Marianne passed away. I felt seen. Bernard raised his glass. "To Theodore Marsh, a man who won't let some punk kid steal his house." Everyone laughed. We clinked glasses. We ate. We talked about everything and nothing, the weather, the Blazers, Joyce's new grandchild, Jim's retirement plans. No one brought up the lottery or Connor or the investigation. They just let me be a person, a friend, a neighbor. At one point, I looked around the table and felt my chest tighten with emotion. When Marianne passed away, I said quietly, I was lonely. When Claire and Connor moved in, I thought that would change. But I was still lonely, because they didn't see me. They looked through me. I paused, swallowing hard. But you see me. You really see me. Maureen wiped her eyes. Bernard cleared his throat and said gruffly, all right. Eat your pot roast. I stayed until late helping Maureen wash dishes while Bernard and Jim argued about baseball. When I finally walked home, the stars were out bright and sharp in the high desert sky. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, Friday, April 19th, I woke to an email from Rachel. Mediation has been scheduled. Thursday, May 2nd, 10 a.m. Oregon Lottery Commission Headquarters, Salem. Be ready. This is it. I read the email 3 times. Then I stood up, poured myself coffee, and looked out the window at the birch trees Marianne had planted 36 years ago. This was it. The moment everything would be decided. I wasn't afraid. The week before mediation felt like the week before a trial. Rachel called me every day. Monday, April 22nd, she explained the mediation process. It's not a courtroom, but it's formal. There will be a mediator neutral professional. Connor's lawyer will present his case first.